This is the voice of the Report of the Week, signing on. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone listening. This is VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week, and we are now signing on for another program. I believe an explanation is in order of several things that you may be wondering. Number one, why there hasn't been a VORW show in so long. Number two, what was this issue that I was talking about? And number three, what is the VORW show? We're going to start with issue number 3 first, because that's most important for any new listeners. The VORW show, and it's a show that doesn't appeal to everyone, that's understood, it doesn't. Some people are going to listen to it for a minute and they won't stand it. Some people could listen for 3 hours. It's all a case-by-case basis. But the VORW show is essentially the podcast, the audio-only broadcast, whatever you want to call it, the YouTube video with no video on this channel, in which I simply will talk for a period of several hours and discuss things other than food. So say you might have wondered, well, what does Review Bra think about things other than burgers or tacos or pizzas? He never really talks about things other than that in his reviews. Well, this is the place to hear it, should you be interested. I've heard it's a good sleep aid as well, so if you're not really interested in what I have to say, perhaps just put it on one night and see if it helps you get to sleep. And people listen for different reasons. Some people listen to this program to relax. Some listen to this program for genuine information. Some listen for entertainment. And some listen for inexplicable reasons. But everyone listens for a reason, and if you are interested, well, welcome to the program. VORW does stand for Voice of the Report of the Week. The Report of the Week abbreviated down, and Voice of course, VO. The program usually follows a standard format. It begins with a monologue and a lecture, in which I talk about miscellaneous things. Then I always talk about shortwave radio, which is a hobby of mine. It's something that's one of my biggest pastimes. And then after that, usually I might talk about the channel, and then I will read some fan letters. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I believe I've covered everything there in terms of what this show is. It has some variety. Speaking of, there's going to be a few changes made in order to allow for quicker production of these shows. It's nothing too striking. The show is still going to have all the formats. There's going to be some little tweaks and adjustments to some of these formats. You'll see. I get to that later. And one thing also, if you're new to this and you want to skip past certain things, I try to add a little program guide in the comments section so it's more easily navigable. Alright, number 2. Which, well, what do you want to hear me talk about next? Do you want to hear me talk about that issue? Or do you want to hear me talk about why there wasn't another VORW in a while? What do you want? Here's a penny. Let's flip a coin and let's decide, alright? Heads is talking about the issue, and Tails is talking about lack of VORW first. So let's flip the coin here and let's decide which one. Tails. Okay, Tails it is then. So Tails, lack of VORW. Alright, well, this goes into what I was actually, I'm going to be talking about it in great detail later in the program. That's what I want to do. I want to really talk about this later in the program of some of the adjustments to make. And, you know, what ended up happening, it's just a real, I don't know what the correct word to use here. Just such a combination of different problems which have arose. I mean, number one, of course, this issue, which I'll be discussing next, really played a major role into that. Other than that, I was very busy in terms of moving about the country, lots of traveling had to do. With that comes, of course, sleep deprivation and busy schedules. You know, just, I don't know the best way to say it, just a lot of stuff going on. And, you know, as I said, I'm going to mention this a lot in great detail later. I really don't want to give anything away just yet. But there's just many factors that went into it. I'm going to cover it later. And if you just want to get to the point now, you can find in the little program guide section where I link that part of the program. And finally, what was this issue? Well, the good news, and I'm recording this Sunday, so it's recent update. The good news is that it looks like the issue has resolved itself in a last-minute, non-legal manner. But I will tell you, it was a very distressing time. The last, 2 weeks or so they took a toll on me. They really did. I lost a lot of sleep. Really couldn't spend a waking moment without thinking of that. I mean, it made me upset, angry, depressed. It was not a fun time, I'll tell you that. But the best news I could have gotten is that we were able to come to an amicable conclusion without having to actually resort to any legal means. But I mean, I don't know. Since the problem's over, I don't want to provoke it at all. So I'll give I'll say what happened without naming too many details at risk of starting something again. What happened was me and family came to a disagreement over this channel and some of the content therein. And some of the content was asked to be removed under the threat of essentially legal actions should there be a non-compliance. But in the end, we were able to talk it through, discuss, and when everything came together, we were able to reach a conclusion again with no lawsuits or any sort of legal battles occurring. We were able to avoid that, and that's a good thing. And the other good thing, of course, is no videos have been removed either. But it was just a very stressful time, that's all. Really took a toll on me, but thank goodness it's over, that's all. Thank goodness it's over. And that's all I have to say on that, Again, since it was peacefully resolved, I'm not going to poke it with a stick, I'm not going to agitate this issue. Hope you understand. But that's the most concise explanation that exists, without naming names or pointing at people or saying this, that, and the other thing. It just details the entire issue, again, giving some privacy to the parties involved. Now, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, since we have that covered up, we have that taken care of, I think we're just going to move on to the next segment of the program. It was a short intro, but You'd think for, a month or two long break, I'd have a lot more to say, but I don't, Sometimes you come up with all these things over time that you want to talk about, and they just leave your mind, You forget about them. They're just fleeting issues. But I talked about the important things, and that's what's important, of course. Important things. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, let's move on to the next segment of the program. Some people's favorite, many people's least favorite, the shortwave radio portion. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week. And you're listening to VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week. Next up, of course, is our shortwave radio discussion. Now, I haven't done a VORW show in a long time, and as a result, of course, as expected, there are some developments in the shortwave radio community. With that being said, I'll list off what I can remember, and what I can't remember, well, I'll list off in another show. Yeah, which is going to be a month from now, you asshole. Well, it'll come when it comes, that's fine. But if there's a sudden halt in any sort of production and videos, well, you know what's going on, and you know why that is now. Hate to say it. But if you see the videos still coming, just remember, no news is good news, and always keep that in mind. So, what's going on in the world of shortwave that's worthy of reporting here on VORW? Well, first and foremost, if you're a shortwave listener in North America, I have some good news for you. You now have the ability to listen to 2 additional international broadcasters that are now targeting the Western Hemisphere. That's the Voice of America and Radio France International. Now, when it comes to shortwave broadcasters, I like to think of 2 types of stations. And I mean this not to demean any of these stations or anyone that listens to these stations, but I just like to classify there as being 2 types of stations on shortwave. You have the hobbyist-friendly stations, and then you have the all-business stations. Well, what do you mean by that? There's 2 different classifications. I mean, I think the names are pretty self-explanatory. It's obvious that one caters more to hobbyists, and the other might cater to other people, and that's right, but I'm going to elaborate. In the world of shortwave broadcasting today, obviously it's not as big as it once was in North America. I'm specifically addressing Europe and North America here, because in Asia and Africa, and even in South America, the shortwave bands are just loaded with stations. I was using a special online shortwave receiver, and I was checking what stations come in South Korea, and I mean, the whole shortwave spectrum is just wall-to-wall with stations, China National Radio, China Radio International, the Voice of Korea, KBS World Radio, Voice of the People, Echo of Unification, North Korea Reform Radio, Radio Free Asia, the BBC, VOA, Shiokaze Sea Breeze, etc., etc. And it's clear, if there are not even dozens, I'm talking of hundreds of stations coming into a certain area of the world with good, strong signals, there's clearly a very large, viable audience in that part of the world that justifies so many broadcasts to this region. Alright. And that's at any time of day. You tune the broadcast bands right now, midday hour, in North America. Heck, I have my receiver with me right now. Let's do this. If you tune the broadcast bands right now, what exactly will you find? Well, I'll show you how the broadcast bands during midday, if you've been a long-time listener, you know my what I always coined my midday dead zone. Let's scan 2 bands and let's see what we pick up on shortwave here at 11:45 a.m. So let's see this. Let's extend the telescopic antenna, move it even towards here, and let's see what we can pick up.
Terry Brown, who educated me, and now for such a time as this,
2 weaker stations, now going to another band. A Spanish station. And that's the Voice of America, so 1 international broadcaster. So, we just scanned 2 broadcast bands, and here in North America, without using any special DXing equipment, like a big long antenna, or going out to a far corner of the property where there's no electrical interference, how many stations did we hear? 4 stations. Only 2 of which came in with a clear signal, and of those 4, only 1 was an international broadcaster, which I would classify as one of these all-business stations. What I'm trying to say is that North America is just not a viable target for shortwave radio anymore. Now, the estimated figures for the amount of shortwave receivers in the year 2000 was around 5 million in North America. But even back then, that didn't mean that there were 5 million people listening, Heck, 3 million of these receivers could have been sitting there in a giant warehouse in Arizona, sitting there in boxes collecting dust. 1 million of them could have been old, those old, almost cathedral radios from, the 30s and whatnot. They're just sitting in someone's house collecting dust that haven't been turned on in 50 years. 500,000 of them could be regular shortwave radios that are just collecting dust, haven't been used since the 80s, and then that remaining 500,000 might be actually active. So just because the statistics 20 years ago told us there were 5 million receivers in North America, that doesn't actually say what these receivers are doing, where they are, and how they're being used. And that was 20 years ago. And granted, I hate to say it, but a lot of those people that might have been listening back then are dead. It's a shame to say. A lot of the people back then were still granted they were all older, probably in their 70s and 80s. But they lived in the era when shortwave radio was still king. They grew up in the, in the 40s and 50s, listening to their transistor radios and the big tube radios and all of those. And just grew up with shortwave. That's what they knew. And they listened to it still because that's, that's what they did their whole life. 20 years have passed, unfortunately, and many of those people are either very old or dead. And that was a large number of listeners right there that's no longer there. So today, a lot of the shortwave stations in the U.S. don't really have a significant audience anymore. 20 years ago, they still would, and it would be mostly an older audience, but it would still be there. And, a lot of these stations, they don't care who's listening as long as someone is. Nowadays, though, the audience in North America is reduced to hobbyists, very, very few casual listeners. There's a few out there, but most people with their shortwave radios today are hobbyists, ham radio operators who are starting to explore the rest of the medium. There's a few expatriate communities out there as well that still listen to shortwave. And that's really it. Listening to the radio isn't a family activity anymore. There aren't shortwave radios in the car. It's not something people really tune to on their way to work. Therefore, a lot of these stations that are broadcasting in North America or targeting North America are really categorizing this hobbyist thing into three categories. They broadcast for one of three means. Number one, to reach a religious audience, i.e. Brother Stare, any programs on Worldwide Christian Radio, World Harvest Radio International, what else is there? WWRB, WRMI. All these religious stations in the U.S. are able to survive because there is a market of listeners who still do tune to shortwave to listen to religious programming exclusively. And that's great. If you are interested in religious programming, you may still find some sort of an audience. But if you transmit more secular programs, you might have a bit of a harder time. Then there's the expatriate radio broadcasts, right, which are just trying to reach ethnic communities in certain parts of the country. Again, they may have some listeners, but due to a language barrier, they really can't be tracked. They're not going to be interested in posting on these shortwave forums talking about how reception is, etc. They might have a radio that picks up the shortwave bands sitting on their tabletop. They might just know to turn it on and tune the dial to this at 8 p.m. and they'll hear the broadcast from their home country coming in with news and music, and say they're too poor to be able to afford any good internet that can really support streaming audio or whatnot. They can't really get the television package that has their special channel on it. There aren't any good local AM or FM stations, so they can still find a shortwave broadcast and they'll listen to that. But again, they're not interested in talking about reception or the QSL card they got. They can care less. They just want to hear their broadcast, and that's fine. And finally, there's the hobbyist broadcast, which is most common. I originally, and maybe some of these stations still think it, thought that these stations were, and they still try to do this, to promote their own culture, but I realized that the majority of people that listen to these broadcasts are what I call QSL chasers. And that's stations such as Radio Romania International and the like, in which they produce a varied and entertaining program, but it is geared exclusively towards hobbyists and not necessarily the general listeners, because they know that that's very, very difficult to target, so they're just going to target the people who are hobbyists of the subject. And those signals are usually strong, clear, with good reception. But in the end, it's just it's I don't know. It's just targeting the people who are interested in shortwave as a hobby. And the stations I'm always inclined to pick up are the stations that aren't. The straight up news stations like the Voice of America, the BBC World Service, Deutsche Welle, Radio France International, that have a strict government budget, and they're just going to broadcast straight up news with no care about listener correspondence. They're just going to broadcast news and information to parts of the world where it's economically viable to do so via shortwave. And they usually have pretty good programs too. The Voice of America, for instance, their English service is a very nice one. The BBC is pretty good too, though their reporting it has a bias to it, but that usually doesn't get in any sort of way of things. Radio France has a good program as well. But it's always more difficult to hear these stations in North America because they don't target here. They're not interested in broadcasting to a bunch of hobbyists. All the people that would be listening, for the most part, as hobbyists, could easily get their news from somewhere else. They're simply getting their news from the VOA by choice, not because that's all that they have to listen to. See, I realize now the VOA and all these shortwave stations want to target places such as very strict dictatorships in Africa, war-torn nations, etc. So say reaching South Sudan, right, where there's no infrastructure anywhere, any potential radio station they can hear on AM and FM is government controlled or too weak to pick up. There's obviously no internet, no real electricity, no amenities of any sort. And if you want to get any free source of news, you have to do it by shortwave, and that's when these international broadcasters come to play with a comprehensive, all-news, and very informative English service, or in other languages. So that being said, these all business stations, I like to pick them up. They're difficult to hear, a lot of them, since they don't target the area. But if you hear them, you're pretty much guaranteed for a pretty good program, and it's satisfying to be able to pick up one of these stations, especially with a good signal. So it was very exciting to hear that the Voice of America and Radio France International added broadcasts that are actually targeting the Western Hemisphere, that are able to be picked up with very, very strong signals right here in the Sunshine State. And the reason why they added these broadcasts is because after Hurricane Matthew hit, which was a very strong hurricane back in October, now thankfully it really spared the East Coast, but boy did it hit Haiti. It hit that country, it smacked it, it really caused a lot of devastation, destruction, and loss of life. Well, after this hurricane happened, these international broadcasters suddenly realized, oh, well, bleep. There's such a place that exists called Haiti. And as of now, their situation is similar to some of the situations that we target our broadcasts to already. And apparently with their special broadcast that they had to Haiti during the hurricane, they must have received a good amount of correspondence. And they thought, well, it seems like shortwave is still viable here. Maybe there aren't a ton of casual listeners, but there's clearly, a lot of radio sets that are capable of receiving that. And what they realized with Haiti is that maybe they don't actively scan around on shortwave. They may not sit there with a nice, Texan PL660 radio, but they still might have some old, Zenith transoceanic receiver from 1958 sitting there on a shelf that could theoretically be turned on and used in a situation that calls for it. And I presume that happened to such an extent that these broadcasters said, well, there's a viable audience here now, so we're going to spend some money and we're going to have some broadcasts targeting the region. So that being said, the Voice of America and Radio France, starting in November, both decided to now have broadcasts going to Haiti. And as a result of that, as we know with shortwave and shortwave propagation, just because a station says they're targeting a specific area, it doesn't work like FM radio, where it'll only be heard in that one region. The broadcast isn't going to suddenly shoot up from, say, Issoudun, France, and plop right down on the island of Haiti, and as soon as you swim into international waters, the broadcast is just going to cut off like that. That's not how shortwave works. We obviously know that. They can target Haiti all they want, and the signal will be strongest there, but you're still going to be able to hear it up and down the east coast of North America, probably into Central America, very well in southern parts of the United States, and into the Caribbean and the surrounding areas. And the same thing applies for the Voice of America. They're going to be using a transmitter site in North Carolina, beam it straight down. Of course, it's going to be heard very well in the southern U.S., even up into the northeast, because the broadcast will bounce back a little bit there. It'll be heard all throughout North America. And I've checked reception on my own receivers and on online ones, and that holds true. These two broadcasts now from Radio France and the VOA are heard very well throughout North America. Well, that's great, you may be saying. Sign me up, finally. I get to hear these all business stations that aren't just targeting these hobbyists here, right here in North America with ease, complete and total ease. I'll get to have my news now. It'll be cool, it'll be fun to do. Be able to hear these stations that I used to barely be able to pull out of the static with such good signals. Now, hey, sign me up. What are the frequencies? Well, I'll give them to you, and I'll give you the times as well. But there's one thing that you need to keep in mind before you tune in, because you may find yourself somewhat disappointed. You have to remember what language is spoken in Haiti, and that's oftentimes Creole. Well, you might be giving yourself a sigh of disappointment, but wait, there's more, as they say. The good news, and actually I'll get to that in a moment, but just because it's not in English doesn't mean the line has been drawn now and I'm not going to listen to it anymore, because there is some English broadcasts as well to talk about from these organizations targeting Haiti. So the ride is not over yet, but here's where it stands. The Voice of America is targeting Haiti every day from 4 to 4:30 p.m. on the frequency of 11,720 kilohertz, and that's 4 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern, on 11,720 and 15,220 kilohertz. So it's 11,720 and 15,220 kilohertz. And that broadcast features 30 minutes worth of news, comprehensive information, and other programs targeting Haiti and the Haitian population. Now, that being said, what this broadcast features is also a news segment. Actually, most of it is in French, and part of it also in Creole. So one of the good things about this broadcast, and this is Monday through Friday, if you are interested in learning the French language, if you speak French yourself, or if you just want to hear it for the heck of it, it'll still prove a useful tool. In terms of language learning, some people actually suggest, even if you can care less about shortwave radio, they actually professionally suggest attaining a shortwave radio just to listen to the broadcast from the world in other languages and being able to open your own vocabulary to it, because it's a very inexpensive way of being able to do that, and you're guaranteed to hear many, many, many languages on shortwave. Now here's the good news. I mentioned Monday through Friday with these VOA broadcasts. They still transmit Saturday and Sunday, and here's where the good news is. This special French and Creole service is not produced on the weekends. I guess there's no news that happens on the weekend for Haiti. But in its place, they relay the English service for 30 minutes. So if you only speak English, all hope is not lost. You'll be able to hear the VOA in English, with English news for about the first 10 minutes of the broadcast, followed by some good music and music commentary by the Voice of America's DJs and music coordinators. You'll be able to hear that again, 30 minutes every Saturday and Sunday from 4 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 11,720 and 15,220. So if you want to hear some VOA programming in English, very, very, very strong signals and clear signals, especially in the southern U.S., look no further than that, because you're still going to be able to hear that. And it's also still worth checking every afternoon. Sometimes they'll plug in the wrong feed by accident, and you'll get the English service on a weekday. And during the last 5 or 10 minutes of the Creole service, they play some pretty good filler music, and it's always fun to listen to, very exotic. You hear a good variety. They'll play some big band music, some rock, some Caribbean music, some Haitian music, and you get a little bit of everything there. And one of the good things about music, of course, is that it transcends language boundaries. You can still listen to a song. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It can be in a language that you don't even understand. That's completely fine. So that's a great thing. You know, music, it just transcends those boundaries. You cannot know a word of it, but if it sounds good, hey, it sounds good. Maybe the song is incredibly vulgar, but if you listen to it on your own, you're not out there with anyone, it's fine. Nothing wrong with that. So, that's the broadcast from the Voice of America. Lots of flexibility there, and that's a great thing to have. So, I recommend giving those broadcasts a listen. If you like the French Creole ones, that's great, every day, Monday through Friday. And if you just want to hear the English ones, look no further than the weekend. You'll hear them on those days then. And you don't need a fancy receiver to hear them. Again, they're targeting a part of the Western Hemisphere. These broadcasts are guaranteed to come in very good, so you don't need to buy a $200 special receiver that's the size of, the size of like a whole table or anything. You don't need that. You don't need that. Just need to buy even a cheap $10, real cheap portable receiver will pick it up because it's a very strong broadcast. Targets the area, so you can hear it on any receiver. So I suggest giving that a go. Now, this one isn't as flexible, and this one really works well if you're a French speaker. This broadcast is exclusively in French with a 5-minute Creole program at the very end. This is broadcast from Radio France International, again targeting Haiti, but I've heard it very good up and down the eastern seaboard. It was received good in New York, even heard good in South Carolina, very good, of course, in Florida. I checked a receiver in Texas, came in good there, good in Michigan. So you're going to hear it pretty good up and down the eastern and even central United States. And it was also received good in Europe as well, but there's plenty to listen to over there. This is more to give hope to listeners in the desolate, forgotten world of broadcasting for North America. But you're able to pick up this broadcast from 8 to 8:30 a.m., that's 8 to 8:30 a.m. Eastern, on the frequency of 21,650. That's 21,650 kilohertz. It's a rare frequency in that band. I believe the 13-meter band. Rare frequency. I always like people using those frequencies. I like seeing the 21,000, etc., etc. I like those high frequencies. They're so seldom used, so I like it when someone uses them. And you can hear it again from 8 to 8:30 a.m. on 21,650 kilohertz. And that's straight from France, Radio France International. 30 minutes of straight-up news programs, talk programs, world news, current events, from a French perspective, straight from Paris. So this is good if you're a French speaker, or if you're trying to learn the language. You now have a broadcast in your favor. Comes in again every morning, Monday, every day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Every single day, 8 to 8:30 a.m., 21,650 kilohertz. Radio France International in the French language. If you just want to hear someone talking in French and you don't have a word don't understand what they're saying, that's fine. But again, if you're a French speaker or you want to learn the language, this is a useful broadcast. So tune in and enjoy the contents thereof, and enjoy both of these broadcasts while these two all-business international broadcasters are still targeting the Western Hemisphere once again. So give that a go. It's worth it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it, but it's worth a go. This is VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week. More shortwave news coming right up, because we have a lot to make up. So more shortwave news incoming. Alright, I have a little bit more to talk about with shortwave, but I'm going to end that pretty soon, because I know not everyone wants to hear me talk about shortwave. If you didn't know by now, shortwave is one of my favorite hobbies. If you didn't know that, well, I'm sure you know that now, since I just said it, but one can easily infer that, since I can talk about it for so long. Shortwave is a favorite pastime of mine. So is there anything else going on with shortwave? There is a new station on the air. If you're in North America, though, you won't be able to hear it. If you're in Europe, you may barely be able to hear it. And if you're in South Asia, you'll be able to hear it very nicely. Radio Afghanistan International is back on the air. They have a transmitter located out of Kabul, Afghanistan. I think it's 100 kilowatts, maybe more. It might be a 300 kilowatt transmitter. It's a broadcast transmitter, though. And for the first time since 2012, Radio Afghanistan is now regularly back on the air. They broadcast every day from, 10 a.m. to maybe 1 p.m. Eastern. And they start off with an English program, then an Urdu program, then Russian, and then Arabic. So in 4 languages there. Radio Afghanistan International. And I've never heard it myself, but there are plenty of recordings up, so they are broadcasting, and they target South Asia specifically, South and Southeast Asia specifically. So if you happen to be in that area, well, you can probably hear them pretty well. And is anything else going on? Let's see. Is anything going on? Anything else? There were some special broadcasts on shortwave. There's going to be plenty of those coming up. Plenty of special transmissions. I have my computer out here with me so I can look and I can let you know what's going on right now. This is courtesy of the shortwave provider. Goes by the name of Shortwave Service. Going to their website now so I can get you the list of programs that are coming up for the holiday season, of course. If their website's up, it's okay. Okay. It's a German provider, but I've used them in the past. They're very friendly. If you ever want to get on the air, I recommend using Shortwave Service. It's a very professional organization. They know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. They do it for a living. It's at an affordable price, and it lets you reach an audience in Europe, Asia, Africa, around the whole world, really, at an affordable rate. So I highly recommend them if you want to do that. Alright. Now, there's a lot of special broadcasts coming out of Shortwave Service for the holiday season, mostly targeting Europe. And I know there are a few European listeners, so keep this in mind. It's with a 100 kilowatt transmitter, so you're bound to hear it across the continent. So here goes. On December 4th, from 19 to 20 hours, 1900 to 20 UTC, on 6145 kilohertz, there's Radio People and Stories, and I'm going to talk about that station in a minute. That's on 6145 kilohertz. Then from 20 to 2100 UTC on the same frequency, there's Golden 80s Rewind Radio. If you want to go back to the 80s, listen to that. On December 17th, there's a special broadcast again on 6145, 20 to 21 UTC. It's called DSWCI. I don't know what that is. All it reminds me of is the shoe store. Have you ever heard of that? David's Sportswear, right? DSW. On the 25th, now this is Christmas. There's a lot of broadcasts coming in for Christmas. On the 25th of December, from 10 to 11 UT, on 11690 to Asia, there's SM Radio International. That's a music station. SM Radio International will be heard as well from 12 to 13 on 17695 to Australia, and on 6145 to Europe from 18 to 19. From 19 to 20 on 6145 to Europe on the same day, of course, there's Radio Mi Amigo International, which is a music station. People might think of the name, Radio Mi Amigo. Maybe it's like a broadcast regarding, friendship between foreign populations, specifically those in Spain or Central and South America with other people, you're mi amigo, but it's just a music station, that's all that it is. A lot of old music they play. That's from 19 to 21 on December 25th on 6145 to Europe. I think you can realize that if you're in Europe and you want to hear these broadcasts, 6145 kilohertz is the frequency you tune to. And then SM Radio International will also be heard the same day on 6005 and 12020. That's 12020. The first from 21 to 22. The second on the 26th from 0100 to 0200 UTC. The broadcast, the first targeting Africa, the second targeting South America. And those are your broadcasts from shortwave service. They're the station that really caters to a lot of these special broadcasts. Even for some of my own broadcasts, I've used this provider, and it's affordable. They have a good high-power transmitter in Armenia. Reaches a lot of targets around the world. And again, it's not dirt cheap, but for $80, you can get your broadcast heard with professional quality. This station in Armenia that they use a transmitter from has many professional clients. The BBC World Service uses them. They have a lot of professional clients, for what they do. That's true. So anyways, what I wanted to mention briefly is this station, Radio People and Stories, and it goes under the German name, I believe, Radio Menschen and Geschichten, or something along that lines. And they're a station that is, I believe, created by this shortwave service organization, because the owner of this provider of broadcast, he's into shortwave broadcasting himself, and he has his own little program that he does. And it's like an interview program, it's not what a lot of these special one-off broadcasts are, is it's usually, and I hate to bash them, but oftentimes it's usually the same exact format. It's just oldies hits, that's what they always broadcast. And it's nice to have a few stations, but when every single special broadcast does the same exact thing, it doesn't give you an awful lot to look forward to. Well, anyways, this station is an interview-based broadcast, usually in the German language, but now they have English programs as well. And what they do, as the name suggests, is it'll cover different topics, and they'll interview different people about it, and it's a amusing, information-based program. They had a special broadcast going to North America the other day. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, and then that's going to be it for shortwave for this program, because I have other things I want to talk about too. But there's a movie that recently came out about shortwave. It's by, I believe, a Canadian producer. I'm going to make sure the recorder is still going here. Yes, it is. Good. It's by a Canadian producer, and it's called Spectres of Shortwave. And I'd call it an independent documentary, and it focuses on the, pardon my lack of knowledge as to the Canadian provinces, either in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia. You can look it up. It maybe is, I don't know, somewhere over there. My dearest apologies to anyone from Canada listening. But it's from a town over there. I think it's in New Brunswick. I'd be willing to put money on it. Now I bet I'm wrong. But it's called Sackville. And it was home of the massive transmitter site for Radio Canada International. And I guess it was just an independent documentary. And at first, I haven't seen the film myself. You wonder, how much can someone say about a shortwave transmitter site, let alone make it into a full-blown documentary? But clearly it happened, and it's apparently well received. As I said, an independent documentary about this transmitter site that's no more. Maybe it interviewed a lot of the local townspeople about how it affected their lives. Maybe a lot of them had jobs there and they lost the jobs. They can talk about the personal connections they had with it. There's a lot to say, you know. Might have to be creative, but you can certainly come up with a lot to say about it. And that, I figure, is what happened. But she produced this feature documentary, professionally done, though independently made, about this. And apparently it was received well by the locals and also at numerous film festivals. It was received well. That's nice. And what the production staff figured would be a good accompaniment, since this documentary features and talks about shortwave radio. Why not broadcast some things about this documentary on shortwave? So they hooked up with WRMI, which is a large station here in Florida, in the Okeechobee, Florida. And WRMI was to broadcast the film's soundtrack. Apparently they had a very interesting film score done for them. They wanted to broadcast it on shortwave. Well, attempt number 1 was a failure. They paid their money, sent the file to WRMI, and they loaded the wrong file or plugged the wrong cable into the transmitter, and instead Old Brother Stare was broadcast in their place. So the first attempt to do that was a failure. Well, if you don't succeed at first, try again, they said, so try they will. The second attempt was a failure as well. They got their file successfully broadcast, and the first 15 minutes were good, and then it just cut to dead air for the remainder of the next hour and a half, I'm sure. That's what it was, an hour and a half, additionally, of just dead air. So attempt number 2 was a failure. Well, come on, they thought. Alright, forget about the soundtrack. We're going to switch to a different shortwave provider. We're going to have a better program than just a soundtrack. So they contact shortwave service in Germany. And mind you, these 2 broadcasts are targeting North America. Well, we're going to talk to shortwave service in Germany. They were able to get on the program. There were, radio people and places. I had a nice interview about the film, all the aspects pertinent thereto, and all was well. And the program is going to be broadcast from Armenia all the way over to North America with just 100 kilowatts of power. Well, sure enough, the broadcast happened, and it was too far away and no one could hear it in North America. So attempt number 3 was a failure, and I think they've given up. So a shame, but you gotta give credit at least to shortwave service that their program was actually successfully broadcast, Gotta give them credit for that, at least. Alright, that's it for me with shortwave. I'm done talking about that for now. I'm not done talking about it. There's so much more I could talk about, but out of respect to those not interested, I'm going to stop. What I'm going to be talking about next has more practicality when it comes to this channel than shortwave radio does. Though, as a matter of fact, I might have a special shortwave broadcast later in the month, but we'll talk about that later in another show. Yeah, well, review, bro. Listen, you haven't put up a new show in a month. You're not going to get to another VORW in January, are you, huh? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about next. And that's what I mean in terms of practicality. If you like VORW and you want to hear more of it, I say this, I don't say this enthusiastically, but there's going to have to be some changes to the show if you want to have it produced more frequently than once a month. It would be a dream to get this show up once a week or once every 2 weeks. And when I made the 100K subscriber VORW, because I didn't read any letters or respond to anything and I just talked and lectured, I thought that was an attainable goal. And boy was I wrong. You see, we reached an impasse. We have a problem, so to speak. The issue right now with the VORW show is that I have too many letters to read. I'm receiving more mail than I can practically, I don't mean the word practically, like, oh, you could practically do it. No, I mean practically, realistically, manage and deal with. And as they say on Shark Tank, you know, having more of anything that you simply just can't handle it is a good thing. It's great that a lot of people are writing in. That's a nice thing. Shows that people are interested and would like to write in. But when the volume is simply too high, that it can no longer be able to be managed, that causes a problem. So I realized there's one solution, and here goes. As a result of a lot of these letters, and also, I hate to mention, I didn't realize how many of them are just trolls, and how many of these people that I thought were loyal listeners writing in with long letters are nothing more than people just writing long messages with memes embedded into it, just trying to get a one-up on me. And a lot of these people might be writing somewhat sincere letters, and then they'll sign at the bottom with some name that is reminiscent of, these prank call names, that it looks like a normal name, but when you read it, it's something a lot more offensive. And they wanted me to read the whole nice letter, and then not even thinking, read their name that they signed at the bottom, and to be, hey, I've listened since 2014. Your programs are so good, blah blah blah. Thank you so much, sincerely. And then I'll read the name, and it'll be some horribly offensive racial slur or something to that extent. I've gotten many letters like that. Many letters of people who want me to shout out people with equally explicit names. I've gotten letters which are pages long, and then they throw a sentence in the middle, which is some sort of silly meme or whatnot, which it just negates the rest of the letter. It shows that they just wrote this BS just for me to get in there to start reading it. And then I'll read their little hidden message that them and their friends can get a laugh over. And I used to read some of those letters as entertainment, but now there's such a voluminous amount of them, it's a waste of time. Because one or two may add some comedy to the show, but dozens of them is just time wasted for everyone involved. So I've gotten many letters like that, and it's a shame, really, but you can't control what people write. That's understandable. And just too many letters to be able to practically deal with. So that being said, if we want this show to be able to be produced more frequently, then there needs to be a change. And that change is only going to come in one way. I can no longer guarantee that your letter will be read anymore. It's a promise I don't like making, but it's something I have to do. If we don't want to wait 1 to 2 months per show and end up with a 6 to 7 hour long VORW that people might like a long show, but that's just impractical, I cannot guarantee your letter will be read anymore. Writing in is optional, and it should therefore be done with the impression that your letter will not be read. As a result, I may not ask questions anymore, because it unfortunately serves as an incentive to write in, and therefore serves the expectation that a response from the writer will be read. And that's just unfair. That's creating a false illusion that cannot be upheld. And I don't want to do that. I knew this was going to happen at some point. I just didn't know when exactly. But that's how it's going to have to be. This VORW show is going to be more focused on just lecturing, lectures, and just talking like I am now. And I'm also going to have to limit myself to a quota of letters for time consolidation, and also so that I don't get burnt out. Another page of letters? 2 more? I've already been recording for 3.5 hours. So with that in mind, I'm probably going to keep it down to maybe 10 to 15 letters being read per show. And that'll be it. What my rule of thumb from now on will be is if you want to write in with the expectation your letter will be read on the air, don't write in. I'm not, if you still want to write in, that's fine, be my guest. And your letter may very well be read and responded to. But, and here's the catch, of course, there is no guarantee whatsoever at this point that your letter will actually be read. Maybe the volume, as a result of this, the volume of letters that comes in is going to be so drastically reduced that maybe all I will get is between 10 and 15 letters per show. And that'll be fine and manageable, and then I'll respond to what's there. But should there be more than that, I'm not going to be prejudiced. I'm not going to simply read the letters for the people who wrote the most or have been listening the longest. I might even use a random number generator or some sort of probability calculator and completely randomly select which letters I will read, because I think that is the fairest thing to do. There used to be times where I would read between 60 and 120 letters per show. And despite the fact that they were long shows, the shows themselves took a very long time to record. I had one idiot, and I feel it's only right to call him this, given the nature of the message he sent me. So I feel no sympathy in doing that. If someone's gonna yell at me and, swear and berate me, then calling them an idiot is respectful compared to what they said to me. But I had one person very childishly write to me saying, dude, the VORWs take 3 hours to record. You sit there on your ass all day and you don't do anything. Just sit there for 3 hours, man, and record me another VORW. And I like how he said record me another VORW, because he thinks that I'm just doing these just for him and not anyone else. And he also fails to realize that I just don't sit here staring off into space all day with a recorder in front of me. I wish it was that easy, and I wish I didn't have that much going on in my life. And yes, the channel is my job and it's my source of income, but it doesn't mean that there aren't any other things going on in my life. As I said, I wish it were that easy. It'd be awesome. But what he didn't realize is, yes, it may take 3 hours to record. Number one, recording a program, I don't do it 3 hours straight. I'm not sitting in a professional radio booth doing this. I have a small little recorder, and I usually record it in maybe hour-long segments, sometimes 2 hours if you're lucky, a piece. But I'm only human, and in that space of 3 hours, things happen. Since it's, again, a small little handheld microphone, and I like to pace about and even gesticulate and offer gestures and, as though I'm being conversational while I'm recording this, things are bound to happen. I.e., I'll sometimes drop the microphone, I'll get a phone call that I need to answer. My voice will just get dry and I need to stop and get some water. Another commitment might come up at the time. And what happens then? Either A, I need to stop recording, or B, if there's a noticeable disruption, I need to go back then and edit it out once I'm all done. And what oftentimes happen is so many of these things happen during the course of recording, I can't keep track of all of them. And now I have to slowly review a whole 3-hour recording, find these little glitches, and edit them out. And that takes just as long. That just takes a lot of time to do. And oftentimes when I want to record a VORW show, I want to have my heart and soul into it as well. I'm shocked that given what's going on, I could even record one right now, but I am in a recording mood and I want to get this out to you all. But it's just a very time-consuming process. I don't mean that in a bad way. It just takes a lot of time to make. And if that being said, with everything that goes into it, sometimes I just become burned out and I'll just say, listen, I need to take a little breather, I need to take a little break from this. I'm going to focus on some other things for the moment. And then, what didn't serve as any motivation, I looked at the audience retention, and I'm not going to cite any specific figures here, but I'll just say this, the amount of people that made it to the end of a 3-hour show, the number is dismal. Dismal. Single digits percentage-wise, we're talking. Under 5%. And that was a blow to my morale, because I remember thinking when I saw it, it is what it is, but I remember just thinking, so many people write in, and so many people ask for the VORW shows, some very politely and kindly, which I respect, and some in different ways. There is no possible way, given the dismal figures of people who have made it to the end, or even past the 2-hour mark, there is no possible way that all these people could actually be listening. So that served as a blow to my morale too. Why bother if no one listens? Now I realize the same conundrum that a lot of these shortwave stations themselves face. They might have a few people listening, but is it really enough to justify fueling millions of dollars, in budget money to have these broadcasts if really there's such a low number of people listening? Not only do they feel like they're wasting their money, but it also, I'm sure, hits to their own morale, and they think, we're doing this for nothing. So now I understand their own issues from their perspective. But I got over that. Whoever listens, listens. And that's fine by me. It was just a tough thing to get over at first, because I would see the analytics and, 15,000 people clicked on the VORW show, and then I realized that maybe 200 or so actually listened the whole way through out of 15,000. So it was just a hard thing to get over, but hey, if 200 people listen, then 200 people listen. That's where it stands. So with that being said, I think for the best, writing in, as it always has been, is entirely optional. But it now must be understood that if you are willing to write in your letter, I would even go as far as to say this. If you're thinking about writing in, say, my letter's probably not going to get read, but maybe there's a small chance that it will be read. So go from there based on what you want to write in. I just, write whatever you feel is being read, but I personally don't recommend writing an awful lot, just due to the fact that it may not get read, and I don't want you to, I don't want you to feel like you wasted an hour writing this for nothing. As I said, it's going to be completely random, the letters which are chosen to be read, and just keep that in mind. As I've already said, and will say again, it's a necessary change if you want to see VORWs coming more frequently. And I shrug my shoulders, and it's what has to be done. So keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to list my emails and ways to contact. But should you wish to contact, just think about that before writing and wonder, do I still want to write or not? And if you still do, by all means, go full steam ahead, and you may hear your letter on the next program. But if you do begin to have doubt, go with your gut. There's nothing wrong with not writing and just listening. That's totally fine by me. So don't worry about that. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean, mind you, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to read any of the letters personally. So, if you want to write in, and you don't want your letter to be read on the VORW show to begin with, it's a personal letter, there's no change to that. What I actually recommend, though, I decided to change something. Now, I've had some problems with the YouTube inbox. For some reason, I can't access the let's see. Is that problem still there? I think it would be. In the YouTube message system, for whatever reason, I can't access the filtered message folder or the likely spam folder. I click on it, and it says couldn't load comments. Try again. I click try again, nothing happens. Try again, nothing happens. And then I try again for the third time, no messages to display. That's clearly incorrect. There were plenty of messages in there when I checked a couple weeks ago. Now I've had this problem for weeks now. However, if you want to write a personal letter, I recommend writing me via YouTube, actually, because I will provide a written response should the message actually get through, and I will actually type up a written response to you. So keep that in mind. If you want to write a personal letter, not for broadcast, I recommend YouTube as your medium to do so. All things considered now, let's provide the contact information. YouTube.com/user/report of the week. Click on the About tab, Send Message button. Click on that button, type the contents of your message therein, type and send. Email repweekinterview1@gmail.com. That's repweekinterview1, the number 1, @gmail.com, or VORWinfo@gmail.com. That's VORWinfo@gmail.com. VORWinfo@gmail.com. Thank you for listening so far, if you've made it. This is VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week. Alright, well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we may as well just get to some letters. I'm going to be reading about 18 letters on this program, as this new strategy is to be implemented immediately. I will be reading 18. I think in my quota, maybe I'll cap it off at 20, no matter what. 20 would be the maximum number of letters I'll read. That's about an hour's worth, right there, since I would be investing a minimum probably of 3 minutes per letter. So I think 20 is a fine amount, you know? And please, I know it sounded like I may have been very discouraging of writing, but if you want to write in, still do, by all means. Still do. I just hope everyone is at least semi-understanding of these changes. They may not be what we want to hear, but if we want this VORW show to become more regular, well, that's just what we have to do. And if you really want to go this approach, if I didn't get to your letter in one show, if it didn't meet the quota, there's nothing against resending it and perhaps getting it read in the next one. There's nothing wrong with that, mind you. Okay. That being said, as I said, we're going to be reading several letters, done accordingly, in a proportional manner. Okay. So 12 letters will be read from in this show, 12 letters will be read, just based on the number of them provided. 12 letters will be read from the Rep Week Interview 1 address. 3 letters will be read from the VORW info address. And 5 letters will be read from the YouTube inbox. Okay? So, without further ado, let's read. Pull the chair up here. Okay, let's read. Fan mail, 28th November 2016. Hello, John. Just saying hello, and I hope everything's well. I usually wait until you've replied to my last email in your VORWs before sending another, but it's been ages since the last one. I just wanted to send something, as it's been a while. You mentioned at the end of your Burger King Pancakes review that you were having some family issues. Hope these issues are sorted out quickly and smoothly. Best wishes to you and your family. Keep up the great content. From Josh. Thank you, Josh. And, it's been a little while since I recorded the first part regarding the family issues. I hope a non-legal solution will still occur. That's how it looks as of now. I just hope for the best, and I really hope for just a peaceful, a peaceful and very smooth solution to this. It's troubling that it even had to happen to begin with, but if it's over, right? Just gotta hope for that. Thank you, and a question. Dear Report of the Week, I recently tried Taco Bell Steakhouse Burrito because of your recommendation, and I think it might be the best Taco Bell product I've had thus far. Thank you for posting your review. Also a question, what is your opinion of the dandy style of dressing? I think it might suit you. Please write back when you can. Thank you, from Nathan. Nathan, thank you. Thank you. And, well, the dandy style of dressing. You can look it up. Look at the pictures on Google Images right now. And I think there's one thing that's very strikingly obvious. The modern dandy, I am not a fan of. I prefer more minimalistic and traditional garments in terms of clothing. And if you know about my style, how I like the cut of the garments, the dandy is not for me. You can see how the pants are just wrapped around the legs like leggings. Very, very modernized, modern clothing, but it's tried to be styled and put together in such a way that it appears more archaic and of the past, The one thing that the dandy style of dressing relies on and really wants is to accessorize and to have attention. And that's not me. I want to just wear a suit, not to look nice. I don't want to look nice. I don't want to look good. The definition of looking good in 2016 is wearing the tightest outfit possible so you can see every crevice of your body, from your calves to your elbows to other parts, and to proudly walk around sporting it all in an extremely tight suit that you wasted $6,000 on, and that's looking good. That's going to get you that Wall Street job. If you go to the interviewer is just going to be taken aback at how good you look. Heck, someone might take a picture of you on the street and post it as some fashion blog, get posted on different sites as inspiration. That is what looking good is defined as in 2016. And I might have been a bit snarky and satirical there, but it's true. It's true. That is literally what people think looks good today. I respectfully disagree. Respectfully, if someone thinks it looks good, then they can think it looks good. That's fine. But I don't wear these suits to look good, or to look formal, or to look acceptable or presentable. I wear these suits because I like to wear them. That's it. When it comes to it, I wear subdued colors and patterns, A black suit, solid black suit, white shirt, and a dark pattern tie. Something that really I feel comfortable with and doesn't attract a lot of attention because I don't want to be the star of the show. Some people really wear a suit and it'll be so exaggerated with colors and patterns of a hat, a pocket watch, a pocket square, everything. Just you name it, they have it. Colorful socks, etc. A real bright tie that just pops out, a boutonniere, lapel pin, everything. They have it. And they want to walk down the middle of the street or the sidewalk or wherever they are and make those heads turn. They want people to look at them. I don't. I just want to be in the corner. I just want to wear what I wear and not have anyone looking my way. So there's a difference. I think the dandy style of dress really suits some people, but I'm not one of them. That's it. Dear Report of the Week, I apologize that this is not a business inquiry, but I figured this was the only way to reach you. I'd like to say that you bear a striking resemblance to a young Joe Jackson. Don't believe me? Go to the 0.59 mark of his music video for Steppin' Out. If you don't see it, then I suppose you need to visit an optometrist. Sincerely yours, Austin. Thank you, Austin. And, oh, I've been told that I resemble a lot of things. I really have been. I've been told that I look like a lot of somewhat recognized people. It's true. So many people I've been told that. I look like this guy and that guy and that guy and that guy and that guy. Him too. You know. And I look like her. I look like Lord. That was more in 2013 though, but I got that a lot back in the day. Not much anymore. But I used to get that an awful lot. On to the next. A VORW fan mail. Dear Mr. John, sorry to hear about the death of your recorder. However, I'm happy to say your new one sounds perfectly fine. Looks forward to listening to a whole new range of VORWs from it. So how was your Halloween this year? Not really a big holiday here in the England, but we managed to receive around 8 trick-or-treaters. I'm happy to say they were accompanied by their parents, so they didn't make much of a mess. I tried listening for pirate stations on that day as well, but there was too much interference around me to pick anything up. Did you manage to pick anything up? Thank you for writing so far. There were no trick-or-treaters this Halloween. None. Zero. Zero trick-or-treaters. But I did scan around for pirate stations. For me, actually, I faced the same problem with the long wire antenna. There was too much, I don't know why, the noise floor was just too high to pick anything up there. However, using the telescopic antenna on the PL660, I was able to walk away from the house, and I was able to pick up a few pirate stations. I was able to pick up Wolverine Radio. That one I think has even been heard on the WebSDR, you know, in Europe. Very strong pirate. And I was able to hear a few others, very weak, you know, at best. Sometimes I would hear the ones in AM, with a very weak carrier, you know, nothing too significant. The ones in upper or lower sideband always come in the best, but the tuning on that receiver for that isn't the best. But I never listen to stations. I just listen to the AM mode broadcast stations, you know, that's what I always listen to. But I was able to hear a few, it was fun. The letter continues, speaking of radios, I just sold my Texan PL600 and I plan on buying a 660 model, as you recommended it so highly. Last year you were having some trouble with it switching on. I just hope it was just a little glitch and nothing too serious. Yeah, it was just a little glitch. I want to tell you, with the PL660, it is a very, it's a very sturdy model of radio. It really is. This radio can take so many falls, and I don't mean saying that in a bad way. But granted, I use this radio every single day. I mean, it's a very heavily used radio. It's on for hours every single day. It's oftentimes perched on various things. So this radio is bound to have accidents every now and then, and that it did. I mean, it's fallen probably from a length of 3 feet, or about a meter, onto a concrete floor. It didn't shatter. It didn't burst open. It didn't even break. It wasn't even hindered. You could theoretically just pick it right up and turn it back on and continue your tuning. And it's done that multiple times. It's fallen from, you know, the roof of a car onto the concrete driveway. It's happened before. It's fallen from my hand onto concrete again. I emphasize that because that's obviously a very strong material for something to hit. And every single time it is not even remotely hindered by it. That's another reason why I recommend the Texan PL660 receiver. This little guy is such a strong and resilient receiver. I don't want you to go sitting there, you know, smashing it on the ground again and again, or even to use that just to see if it holds true to that. But just in a worst case scenario, if it were to fall, it's going to survive that fall. and it'll be okay. And it's another reason it's a great receiver if you ever want to trek into the outdoors, if you're an outdoorsman, or if you want to, bring it out to the woods and sit around a campfire listening to something on the radio. This is a very sturdy receiver, and you could easily bring it out in the wilderness, and it'll be totally fine. On a camping trip, if you want to do that, if you're on some sort of expedition, if you're on a cross-country biking trek, it's a great receiver just to haul with you, because it's definitely going to take a lot of blows. It really is. And finally, the letter finishes off. I got really excited after listening to your last VORW since you mentioned the possible return of the Idle Mind. Next to VORW, the Idle Mind are my favorite videos of your channel. The couch always brings me back to 2012. My favorite episodes are the one about drinking glasses and the one about basements. Oddly enough, we also had Abyssal Cleaner. However, I think yours is a lot older. As always, I wish you all the best and hope you have a great November. And my November was fine indeed. And a second email, an attachment. I mentioned in the letter I sent that I traded my Texan 660 or 600 for your recommended 660 model. Well, it arrived in the mail 2 days ago, and it really is wonderful. I was even able to pick up Radio Miami indoors. Was rarely ever able to do that. Thanks for the recommendation. I'm really happy to try out the new radio. And best of wishes to you as always. So thank you very much. And likewise, of course, I recommend throughout the month of December, especially at the end of the month, try out that frequency of 6145 kilohertz. I know on the web SDR in the Netherlands it came in very nicely. And I imagine it would probably hit the UK with good signals as well, so I recommend checking that frequency out. Hello, John. Just wanted to see if the new VORW is still in the works. I sincerely hope you don't stop making them. They're the highlight of my week. Sorry to bother you, I'm sure you're busy, but I love the VORW very much. I just had to ask. Please have a good evening and take care. Yes, the VORW is actually being made right now, not to worry. Not to worry. Some people might complain about the nature of some of the letters that I'm reading, but again, it's totally randomized to give everyone a fair chance that writes in. On to the next. Hi, I was just listening to VORW 132 and I heard about your failed Sansa clip, so I thought I'd share a little info about these devices. First thing, they never fully turn off. The only time they're physically powered down is if you hold the power slider up for about 15 to 20 seconds. So if yours is just frozen, try to hold the power slider for 20 seconds, might revive it. The other option is to just forget it in a drawer for a couple of weeks until it depletes its battery, then connect it to the computer, and in a minute or so the screen should light. If trying these methods doesn't help, there is a method to try to rewrite the software on the device, but that involves disassembling it and can potentially kill it permanently. Hopes this helps. From VORW, Eastern Europe. P.S. I have a Texan PL360 on the way. Hopefully I'll be able to hear your voice on shortwave at one point. Well, thank you. A lot of shortwave listeners that write in. It's very nice. And to give an update on that, unfortunately, what would happen is it was unresponsive. In that I held the little power bar up for extended periods of time, no response. It seems as though there might have been a connection issue with that it just didn't register anymore. I would plug it into the computer using the adapter, and it would light up, as any would, but it wouldn't actually connect. I mean, you couldn't actually access the files on it. That was very peculiar to me. You couldn't access the files even though it was plugged into the computer. But it would light up, and it would usually then say connecting, and then it would start charging. Well, this would light up. I'd get that little pale blue light go on, and then it would immediately shut right back off. And I'd unplug it, plug it back in again. It'll light up for a split second, then shut right back off. So clearly some sort of electrical issue. I let it sit around for a bit, and then I regret to inform you that it had another problem, and it is now, it's completely inoperable and insalvageable, so we have this one at least, and that's good. Alright, what do we have next? What do we have next? Hey, I'm sure you get hundreds of emails a day, so no need to respond to this one if you're even reading it. I just wanted to let you know that I discovered your channel last month. I was so hungry one night that somehow came across one of your fast food reviews. I don't even know what I typed. I think it was like good food in the search bar, in my opinion. Anyway, I just wanted to say that I really dig your style. Your dry humor is extremely refreshing and ingenious. Most of the reviews aren't really applicable to me since I'm a vegetarian, but that won't stop me from watching your great content, though. Actually, I do feel obliged to say that I opted not to try the Pizza Hut grilled cheese pizza because of the mediocre review you gave it, so thanks for that. Keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for all the weekly content from All Out Movies. Well, thank you for writing. Thank you for your comments, and it's a pleasure to be able to serve you with these reviews, even if you are a vegetarian. My pleasure. Dear Review Brah, I just started watching your reviews and listening to VORW. They're fantastic. I'm drawn in by your linguistic faculties. Good stuff. I haven't yet donated through Patreon, but I plan to at any rate. I was thinking of interesting ways which you could use the funds. The best I could come up with doesn't really involve spending money, though. I'd love to see maybe once a year or so you apply for and start working at some of these restaurants. An inside report, you might say. The audience could learn exactly why BK puts so much mayo on their Bacon King. Can't imagine you'd have any difficulty getting a job at one of these places, working a shift, recording the skinny, and quitting. You got this, Review Brah. Take care, from Andrew S. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you for your suggestion. Andrew S. writing in. And again, thank you. Thank you for writing. That's an interesting one. I've never had that suggested to me before, to actually get a job at these establishments and then go from there. It's interesting, though. Hey mate, my name is Phil. I live in Adelaide, South Australia. I've been watching your videos for several weeks now, and I truly enjoy them. Recently I was in the hospital with blood poisoning, and I was very lucky to survive. Whilst in the hospital I couldn't eat due to sickness, however watching your vids on delicious food reviews engaged my appetite. Therefore I was able to eat. Keep up the good work. Never change who you are. P.S. I would love to Skype with you, mate. Kindest regards from Phil. Thank you, Phil. And I hope you've been able to have a swift recovery. And I'm glad you enjoy the videos, and I'm glad they're able to help get you through those trying times. So again, it's my pleasure, and I certainly won't change who I am, no matter what goes on in life, you know? No matter what, I'm not going to change for anyone but myself. So thank you. Hey John, I just felt compelled to write you and convey my admiration toward you and your channel. Admittedly, I've only seen a handful of videos and just listened to the most recent VORW. After hearing your timeline of how you got where you are today, I am so incredibly inspired by your courage, determination, work ethic, and overall professional demeanor. I know you've had some rocky trials you've had to overcome, and your resilience has garnered my utmost respect. I'm just a 30-year-old dude from Texas who stumbled upon your channel through a recommendation from a friend, but let me tell you, the world needs more passionate, caring, down-to-earth people like you. It's actually a little weird for me to be writing this email. I have never reached out to anyone on YouTube, or any type of quote-unquote celebrity for that matter. but seeing your commitment to producing quality programming, entertainment, and reviews, coupled with your incredible subtle humor in each of your videos, really struck a chord with me. I've been a long-time Redditor and 4chan lurker, and know just how despicable and hateful people can be behind a monitor. I just wanted to reinforce to you that you, yes you, are valued by many people. I know it can be hard at times to keep your head up. I've been there many times myself. But just know that you are an incredibly special human being that needs to be heard by a lot of people. Hell, I know that we'd all be lucky to have a friend like you, and I hope you see us all the same way. I know you don't know me from Adam, but if you just ever need anyone to talk through, if these things get rough in life, you could always email me or vent if you want to have a chat. Keep on keeping on, brah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for writing. It means a lot, and it's again my pleasure that you found the channel, and I hope I hope you still enjoy it. And thank you. I'm really glad that you like it, and your words mean a lot. They do. No matter what kind of things happen in life, I always believe in just staying true to yourself and what you believe in and how you want to live your life. And I think you shouldn't really stop for anyone but yourself. You should do what you feel is right. It's just you. Chances are you're not going to be coming back. And some people have theoretically proposed, well, in life, it's just an infinite loop over and over again of just your life. Well, even if that's the case, it's only just going to be this one life with this one set of decisions that you make. So make good use of them. Make good use of the time that you have here in doing what you feel is right and what brings you happiness. Greetings from the UK. Good day, Report of the Week. Hope you are well. As of 3 weeks ago, I'm a new viewer of your YouTube channel. I discovered you randomly while browsing Reddit and found your videos amusing. As such, you could probably have thrown me into the ironic viewer category. However, since that first taste of content, I've explored the greater depth and diversity your channel has to offer with regard to the Idle Mind lectures and VORW content, as well as the greater depth of your personality, beliefs, and general kind-heartedness and openness to your listeners and viewers. Although I have no experience with shortwave radio, I find the updates you provide and the knowledge you share on the subject fascinating, and though I don't have an investment in it, having never attempted to listen to shortwave, I consider it a shame that some of the more well-known and lesser-known stations around the world are slowly shutting down. I'm not opposed to the newer technologies that we, as a race, are developing. In fact, I consider myself fairly up-to-date, but I do mourn for the loss of some of the older tried and tested technologies that are slowly being lost, and just hope that we don't get to a time when a future generation is forced into a situation where old tech is required, but most of the knowledge of them is lost. I look forward to listening to many more VORW shows, and hope to be able to contribute with regard to any questions you may pose in the future. Thank you for your service, Tom from the UK. Thank you, Tom. And that's a very good point that you bring up, by the way, in terms of the older technology and potentially having a younger generation that may be confronted with them. Say for instance, oh, what the heck, another world war, or an extremely horrible natural disaster, years and years from now, 40 years in the future, where, it's almost a 10.0 magnitude quake that hits, hits California, and the whole region is absolutely destroyed, and there's all communications wiped out, even these future means of communication that we have yet to discover. It's all gone. Radio is mostly forgotten about, and now all of a sudden these people maybe people wouldn't even have shortwave receivers anymore. They might have some really old ones laying around. And some government offices and whatnot might need to have to start utilizing shortwave to even be able to communicate and, you know, broadcast status reports and whatnot. And no one knows what they're doing at all. It's a shame. It's a shame, but I can see that happening. Hi, Review Bra. I ask you just a few minutes of your time to show my support to the channel and express my gratitude for your work. I've discovered your video reviews thanks to the CNN Money interview, and the first thing that got my attention was, I can't lie, your black suit and purple tie. It's not every day that you see a 20-something-year-old YouTuber dressed so nicely, and I really was curious. You need to know that I do not live in America, and because of this, I will probably never be able to eat or try 90% of the items that you review. But still, I don't miss one single video, and I'm truly happy whenever I get a notification of a new one. That's because food and drinks are only one half of what keeps me watching. What really keeps your videos so special are the great vibes they give me and how they make me feel. I find your way of talking extremely relaxing, your attitude kind of reassuring, and most importantly, you give me a very rare sense of peacefulness. I'm sure other people already told you all of these things, but I wanted to let you know anyway. It is worth to also spend a few words about your classy and never forced sense of humor. A lot of YouTubers try too hard to be funny, and that makes you feel uncomfortable. Well, you're just being yourself. In my opinion, everything in your reviews seems very genuine, thanks to the fact that no editing is used, letting the viewer follow the flow of the recording. I'd like to talk about VORW and the idle mind too. During the VORW, I felt really sad hearing what you had to go through because of some stupid kids. Now, honestly, I'm not a strong person. I don't know how I would have dealt with the hate messages, especially at such an age. I'm glad that you don't pay attention to that kind of thing anymore, but I decided to write this mail so that in difficult times you can remember that you have many, many fans out there. Regarding the lectures, all I can say is that I hope you'll bring back the show, and I know you're already planning on doing it. I'm sure that the Report of the Week has a bright future ahead, and I wish you all the best. Take care. P.S. If you ever plan a trip to Europe, let me know. I'd love to make you try some original Italian dishes. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for writing. It means a lot, you know, it really does, to, you know, just to see that and to see how many people really do care. Thank you. I mean, I wish I could read more letters, but I realize that given the situation, it's just, it really can't be done, unfortunately, and it's a shame, but we're going to balance it out. Whenever a new system is adapted or adopted, the first few times are always rough and rocky. But as things begin to settle and the dust begins to settle and we're making these shows with more regularity, we'll figure something out and we'll get a smooth flow of information and ideas going, and this VRW show will just be fine. Now all of the emails have been read, so now we're going to move over to the YouTube inbox and see what that has to offer. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week. To conclude this broadcast, we'll now resume the letter reading, and we'll read a short number of letters from the YouTube inbox. Again, ladies and gentlemen, should you wish to contact this program, you may do so in one of three ways. Send me a message via YouTube at youtube.com/user/TheReportOfTheWeek, or write me an email at repweekinterview1@gmail.com. That's REPWEEKINTERVIEW1, the number 1, @gmail.com. or you may also write me at vorwinfo@gmail.com. I repeat, vorwinfo@gmail.com. We now begin. Dear Review Bra, I'd like to start out by saying that my brothers and I thoroughly enjoy and appreciate your reviews and miscellaneous videos. Thank you for creating such informative and entertaining content. Your dry wit inspires us all. I have a very important set of questions to ask you. My friend and I are currently involved in a heated debate over the following. Is a hot dog a sandwich? And is cereal soup? Your input would be greatly appreciated, and I think your experience in fast food reviews could give you great perspective on this topic. Thank you in advance, a loyal fan. Well, thank you for writing. I would, you know, if you went by the sole definition that a hot dog is a sandwich, since a sandwich is defined as essentially a top and bottom piece of bread with a selection of ingredients between the two, and the bread is used to hold those ingredients together, then yes, a hot dog is a sandwich. And is a cereal soup? Well, now, that comes down to, do you eat cereal dry? Or, of course, you eat it with milk. And that's obviously given the assumption that you eat it with milk or other liquid. I've always been a dry cereal eater. So, I mean, how I eat cereal, I don't consider that a soup. Right? I don't. I think in the end, when it comes to things, in terms of food, people act as though there is a strict set of rules and guidelines, that some people end up criticizing them at the same time, unknowingly. For instance, by definition, a cereal would essentially be a soup. There is a liquid, and you have small little chunks of other material floating about in said liquid, and you consume it oftentimes, with a little bit of a spoon, or some people just slurp it straight out of the bowl. And it's very similar in how one would define a soup. Yet, if one were to go about and call a cereal a soup, it would be regarded almost entirely in a comedic manner. For instance, if I were to review some Captain Crunch, or Fruit Loops, or Cheerios, Lucky Charms, whatever it is, and I were to say, hello everyone, this is Running on Empty Soup Review. And I went ahead and I said, today's review is for this soup. We're reviewing the soup. It's going to be the first soup review I've ever done. People would be, well, number one, they think I was joking, and number two, eventually you would get on people's nerves and they'd say, listen, dumbass, it's not a soup, it's cereal. So, it's a very strict case-by-case basis, even though it may, by all means, be exactly the same as a soup in terms of characteristics. Well, there's clear differences as well, simply by how the consumers themselves view the product. Would I say a hot dog is a sandwich? I would say so. It's a very unique looking sandwich, but it is a sandwich, and you can go to plenty of restaurants, and some on their menus will have sandwiches and then hot dogs as their own entity. Others will have hot dogs grouped with the sandwiches, but maybe in their own little category, whatever it may be. I think a hot dog is a sandwich. But would I say a cereal is a soup? I'd say that's a case-by-case basis. It has all the characteristics of a soup, but if you call it that, you're going to get beaten up in the streets, I'll tell you that. Thank you. Thank you for writing. Hey, I've recently come across your channel and I find it awesome. It's great to see the suits you showcase and the traditional approach to helping people decide on some of the local food they can choose from. If you don't mind me asking, how did you get into shortwave radio? Seems very interesting, and I'd like to know some of the stuff you looked at when beginning it. Thanks for the time. I look forward to hearing back, and keep up the good work. Regards. So thank you for writing. And, well, how did I get into shortwave radio? It was from a station that you'll find posted about even today. And this was years ago. This was back in 2012 even. This was a station that you find, you know, still posted about on, oh, you name it, all these sites, every clickbait site, you know, you find it posted once a month on BuzzFeed and Cracked. Does anyone even use that site anymore? Cracked.com? Seems a bit dated now. I don't know. Some miscellaneous Facebook group. Maybe even make the rounds on Reddit every now and then. Find it posted on 4chan's X board every other week. And that's UVB76. That's what everyone always would call it, UVB76. The station was actually known as MDZHB, and then the call sign changed again to ZH, and a few other characters. I lost interest in it eventually, and with all due respect, I stopped caring about it. But the station UVB76, I'm sure many of us have heard about it. It also goes by the synonymous name, The Buzzer. And as a matter of fact, since it's still transmitting as we speak, now I can't receive it directly, it's too far away. The power is too low, and the frequency is too low. But if I tune to 4625 kilohertz, that's 4625, and I listen in upper sideband mode, it's weak, but I'll be able to hear it. Still buzzing away. I think the frequency 6985. Oh, it's actually my bad. It's 6998. You could also hear it. There it is, buzzing too. Bit weaker. But yes, that's the buzzer, of course. I think many of us know what the buzzer is, but if not, I'll provide a brief explanation. Due to the sheer uncertainty surrounding the buzzer. The station has been on the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without interruption on the same frequency since the 80s. And it makes this buzzing tone. That's what they say. It just goes, it just buzzes at a very standard interval over and over again without much interruption. But every now and then, that buzz is interrupted by a speaker, and a male or female announcer will stop the buzzing, get on the air, and begin reading essentially coded messages, numbers and letters in Russian. And after a few minutes of doing that, we'll sign back off, and the buzzing will resume. And no one knew what this was. No one had any idea. And these articles will still try to tell you that there's no idea of what it is. Oh, could it be some madman, the absolute madman in Russia, has a transmitter in his basement and he's just doing this because he's insane? Is it zombies? Is this a dead hand nuclear signal that if the buzz stops, the nukes are going to come flying towards us? Or what is it? And when I first saw this article, and I think it's actually a good way for people to get into shortwave. A lot of people on the WebSDR site don't like the people that talk about the buzzer, and I could understand. You have people, they come in and they just spam the whole chat, and it's annoying. But then you get a few people that also get into shortwave because of the buzzer, because they heard about these articles, and they thought to themselves, well, maybe I want to try to hear the buzzer myself. How do I exactly attain a shortwave radio? What the heck is shortwave radio even? And they might come across some of these WebSDR sites where they'll buy their own receiver. They'll be able to hear the buzzer for a bit, and then they'll start tuning around. They'll start playing around with it, and they'll see, hey, wait a minute. There's other stuff to listen to than just this buzzer. That's pretty cool. And that's what happened with me. You know, I got into shortwave originally back in 2012 because of the buzzer, the Russian buzzer. I'd like to tell you something, actually. It's an interesting little story. No, I didn't realize it at the time. When I got into shortwave in 2012, and granted, I think most of us can relate. I think it's the case. Obviously, you hear me talk about shortwave radio for dozens of minutes every show. But I think those of us who are into shortwave, or who even aren't, may be eventually faced with the same questions, you know. You're just not even sure what it is or how it works to begin with. You know, when I first went into shortwave radio, I knew about this buzzer, and I did it because I wanted to hear this buzzer for myself with my own ears. I wanted to listen. I thought it would be the coolest thing in the world to be able to hear a message from the buzzer. But I was not sure how to go about hearing it. See, I was mistaken. I thought that shortwave radio originally was very similar to how AM and FM radio in the United States is, where you can find the stations and then you can click on a link and you'll be able to hear it on iHeartRadio online, you know, as a web stream or whatnot. Because back in 2012, I wasn't a real terrestrial radio listener. I didn't have my own radio set or anything like that. I was into UHF, VHF scanning. I had a portable radio scanner and a tabletop one, and I could listen to the different stations there, you know, like the police, the emergency vehicles, the airplanes, etc. Theoretically, I could have gotten the 10-meter band on those receivers. That is shortwave, but I didn't know that then. But anyway, so I didn't have any sort of terrestrial receiver or radio with me. I was a digital radio listener, essentially. I would listen to the radio quite often, but I would do so listening online exclusively. So say, back then, I liked listening to my pop music. I would listen to Z100 online. I would listen on their website, their live stream on their website. I wouldn't actually get my FM radio and tune it to 100.3 megahertz and do that. I would just listen online. Same thing, if I wanted a different variety, listen to WPLJ online on their iHeart radio stream, not actually on my own receiver because I didn't have one to go off of. So because I was a digital radio listener, of course, the concept of shortwave radio and how it works was very foreign to me. I searched around desperately at the time for you know, for any sort of way to listen to it. And eventually I did find this one website where this guy in Eastern Europe essentially just has his receiver there, say in Ukraine or Poland or wherever that may be, where the buzzer comes in 24/7. He has his shortwave receiver just tuned to that, and he has just a live microphone at his radio speaker, so that can rebroadcast the buzzer's audio online to an internet audience. That's how I originally found that. And I was listening, but I never heard anything. Okay, fine. Then by some fluke, and I really have no idea at all how I found this site. I figure it must have been maybe from reading the comments on some of these sites that were talking about the buzzer or whatnot. Because I really haven't the faintest idea. I came across the WebSDR online shortwave receiver located in the Netherlands. And that's a receiver that I still use today. Before I actually started recording, I was sitting there. I mean, I have my own receiver sitting over there right now, but I was still playing around on that online WebSDR receiver because it's such a cool piece of technology. Even in the almost 5 years I've known of it, hasn't changed one bit, but there's no reason for it to change. It does the job so exceptionally well, and there's nothing to change about it. It's a great site. Let me make sure we're still recording. Good, we are. And there's nothing to change about it. So, by some miracle, I came across this site. Again, I figured the only possible way I could have found it was if it was linked in a comment, because I wouldn't have known what all that stuff was beforehand. I couldn't have looked it up myself. Maybe I looked up in Google search, online shortwave receiver. I wasn't linked directly to the site. I don't remember that. I think it might have then gotten me to some forum thread where people were talking about it or whatnot. But anyway, that's irrelevant. One way or another, I found the famous WebSDR receiver. That's not where the good times end. I turned on the WebSDR. I went to the site, like I'm doing right now, and I was greeted with the all familiar image, of course, of the radio static and that purplish backdrop with all those lines of gold and different shades of purple going through it. I mean, when I look at it now, I know what I'm looking at. I see the broadcast bands. I see what I could easily tune into. I'm very, very familiar with it now in terms of what it is and what I'm looking at exactly. But when I saw it for the first time in 2012, the summer of 2012, I didn't know one bit what I was looking at. I was so incredibly confused. I didn't know that you can zoom in on those little gold-colored markings, and you can see that those are actually stations transmitting there. So, I was very surprised. I tried tuning around, zoomed all the way out, and I couldn't hear anything because I was just blindly tuning around. I didn't know the first thing I was doing, so I left the site. But I added it to my bookmarks. And it took me a whole year later. For whatever reason, one day I was sitting there, going through my bookmarks, and I saw it and I thought, oh, that's so cool. I remember that site. Maybe I didn't really understand it, but maybe I'll give it another go. So a whole year later, in 2013, again, the summer of 2013, I open up that site, and then I begin playing around. I look at all the buttons, I start pressing things, look at the chat, and then, sure enough, that's when I start hearing things, and I listened to the buzzer for a while, listened to only the buzzer for a few days, and then I began deviating from it. I began checking out the other signals. I saw that there are actual radio stations there. I saw I saw the little labels. I saw, the BBC. I came across their English broadcast. I thought, oh, right, I know the BBC. That's neat that you can hear them over here. You know, I heard a few other stations that I recognized, some of the Chinese ones, and I began exploring it all. And right then, that got me into shortwave radio. And ever since then, I've been fascinated by it. And I'm a very regular shortwave listener. I listen to it for hours every day. Probably spend a good 5 to 6 hours a day listening to shortwave radio. But I still don't really try to consider myself a hobbyist. I just try to consider myself a listener, you know. Again, I don't really write for QSLs or anything anymore. I just listen and enjoy the programs and send them an email that I'm listening and enjoying the program, and that's all. But that's how I got into it, really. And part of me wants to kick myself for not getting into it back in 2012, because there were so many more stations on the air back then that are now gone forever that I could have heard. But really, when I didn't have that understanding, I could have listened to, Radio Bulgaria International, or Radio Canada, or Radio Netherlands Worldwide. I could have listened to them all day, and I still wouldn't have really grasped the concept that they were going to be gone soon. I didn't have a crystal ball. I couldn't have seen that. Same thing with 2013 and even 2014. I mean, my focus on shortwave was just different back then. I was interested in a lot of the number stations and the buzzer and all of that. But I was still open to scanning around and listening to other things, but that wasn't my focus. That changed in late 2014, and from then on I've only been interested in the broadcast stations. But even then, I mean, I wish I would have listened to the Voice of Russia when they were on shortwave, and I remember I listened to their broadcasts a few times. Yes, I did. I remember one time in late 2013, I found them on a really high frequency, just barely coming in, but I listened to them for like 15 minutes in English and hearing some news. But it's really my only real recollection of actually listening to the Voice of Russia. I didn't savor that moment and think to myself, wow, this station's going to be off the air in 6 months, I better listen to it. I didn't think that. I only remember that now because the station's gone, and that's just the one memory that was fresh in my mind of it. After it was gone, I committed that to long-term memory. I remember seeing it. I remember scanning around and seeing all these Voice of Russia broadcasts or from other stations, but I didn't pay any attention to that. But now it's different, but still. Let's say All India Radio was to leave the airwaves tomorrow. I can tune on my receiver right now, turn it on. I can try to pull in their station. I could listen to it for 12 hours straight, but that wouldn't just suddenly leave me satisfied, and I'd say to myself, alright, that's great. I got my fill of All India Radio forever. You guys can go now, that's fine. It just doesn't happen like that. So, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'll shut up and I'll talk about something else now. A P.S. If you really want to know what the buzzer is, it's a Russian military station. The buzzing sound itself serves as what they call a channel marker in order to preserve that frequency, so everyone else would hear that and know that someone is using that frequency. It kind of, takes a hold on it. And it's essentially just a Russian military communications frequency. That's all that it is. That's how the mystery is solved. It's still fun though, Alright. Enough with that. Enough. Let's see what else. Let's see. Hi, Review Bro, I'm a new subscriber. Wondering if you would do a review of the Taco Bell Quesarito. I'm a big fan of quesaritos. but have not had one from Taco Bell, and I'm wondering what it is like. Props to you for going so long. There'll always be people being mean on YouTube and in general, but I think it's cool, and you're really good at it. Well, thank you. I did review the Taco Bell Quesarito. I actually reviewed that a while ago, about a year ago. But the review is up, should you still be around and want to check it out. It's there to be reviewed. Great videos, man. Every time I'm considering getting some greasy fast food, we watch your channel first. Notice you haven't reviewed Papa Murphy's Pizza, though. Seems like they're gaining business and popularity. Also, my friend and I were discussing how Pizza Hut has taken away several items. A pizza drizzle, ranch crust toppings, and in Seattle area, at least, the bacon stuffed crust. Can't understand why they would drop a menu item, which clearly has great interest. Alright, thank you first and foremost about the Papa Murphy's. I can get to one, and pizza is always fun, so I think that will be on the agenda for the future. Secondly, here's the logic that Pizza Hut uses when they get rid of things on the menu. See, I'll cite a personal example. Pizza Hut has had an item that goes in periodically every now and then. I think they first released it about a decade ago. Maybe even, might have been in 04. It's either 04 or 06. I don't remember when it really first came out. You can look this up, should you please. But it's called the Cheesy Bites Pizza. The Cheesy Bites Pizza. Anyway, I remember when it first came out, and my goodness, was that something else. Wow. You know, it was delicious. It was wonderful. It was their pepperoni pizza. And if you ever get their stuffed crust pizza, you know the pizza there is like a little bit more of a, not thin crust. I mean, it's thin compared to their pan pizza, but it's like a hand-tossed type of pizza. But it's a unique type of pizza, you know? It's like hand-tossed, but it's not exactly like their actual hand-tossed pizza. It's its own unique little type of pizza there. Anyway, I've always liked that style of pizza from Pizza Hut. I know people always toss that type aside and they just want the crust, but I've always liked the type of pizza that goes along with the stuffed crust pizza. Anyway, the Cheesy Bites Pizza had that type of pizza, pepperoni of course, and the stuffed crust pizza, instead of having the one uniform ring of cheese around the crust, it was cut into about 18 small little breaded knobs. They call them bites, though. Bite-sized little knobs protruding from the crust that were seasoned and filled with cheese. So you can eat the pizza. I mean, you can look at pictures, you know exactly what it is. Eat the pizza, then you have these little, you know, bites on the crust. You can pull them out, eat them. And they were so fun to eat. It tasted so good. It was delicious. Oh, wow, great to even think about. I'm gonna have to get some Pizza Hut today after this. I'm dead serious. And anyways, so this pizza was excellent, and it was my favorite pizza ever. And then they got rid of it, and I was saddened. And then they brought it back 2 years later, took it away. Brought it back in 2009, then took it away. Brought it back in 2012, then took it away. Then brought it back in 2014. And then guess what they did? They took it away. And actually, that went into 2015, and they took it away. So now let's keep those fingers crossed for 2017, and maybe they'll bring it back. That would be awesome. You see, though, the reason why they do that... And another thing, the bacon stuffed crust pizza, that's a great one, too. Very nice pizza it was. But you see, the one reason why they do that, they get these items that everyone clearly enjoys, be it pizzas themselves or accessories, and they take them away. It's not a good, I mean, it's a good strategy. It's not nice to the consumers, but it's a good strategy. Is when the demand is highest, instead of just leaving the product there and eventually letting it wane in popularity and people will eventually get sick of it, when demand is highest, they'll remove it from the menu so they can deprive people of it. And then about a year later, bring it back, and even more people will come back to get it, and it'll make them more money in the end. And they'll just repeat the cycle as many times as they possibly can. So that's why. That's why they do the things that they do. On to the next. Hello, Review Bra. I wanted to drop you a line and tell you how much I enjoy your channel. Your reviews are always detailed, informative, and eloquent. The juxtaposition of your suits, love the tie choices, by the way, and the fast food you review is excellent. You provide an abundance of joy to my cynical soul, and I thank you for that. You remind me of my favorite musician, Rob Mayle. I hope that's pronounced right. He's in the band Sparks, and he's very similar to you. Same aesthetic, same dry sense of humor, and same dedication to his craft. I think you'd enjoy them, seriously. Anyway, if you're ever back in Los Angeles, love to meet you. You're the absolute best, and I hope you continue reviewing every week. Your fans crave more. From Michelle. Thank you for writing. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your comments on the tie choices. Thank you. The ties are very nice. I like the ties. Thank you for writing. Thank you. Now check out that band as well. Thank you again. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, good. This is the right message. It's tougher to find the messages you wanted to read in the YouTube inbox, because there's no way to really mark them, so you have to keep scrolling up and down, and if you missed it, you gotta scroll back down. You know, in the email, you can just mark the emails that you want to read. Anyway, hey John, I sent you a message before, and it was mentioned in one of your VORW broadcasts. Anyway, I've been a fan of yours for a few years now. You've inspired me for so long. The way you dress in your suits, do your own thing. You don't do it for views, money, etc. You do it for you. I'm a third-year medical student now, just starting my rotations. I'll be going through psychiatric, surgical, and whatever else positions throughout my local hospital, and I just wanted to say, you have inspired me to stay my course. You have inspired me to stay sophisticated, stay true to myself, and stay committed to direction in life. Thanks, Review Bra. I really hope you get this message, and quite frankly, I really hope you read it aloud or during a broadcast, just so I can feel proud of myself for making you proud enough to read it. Thank you so much. From Ron. Well, thank you, Ron. Thank you very much for writing. And it really means a lot. You know, when I started this channel, it was never even an idea in my mind that these videos would ever be helping people out through whatever toils and turmoil they may go through in life, or to inspire people to stay their course, to do what they want to do, or that these videos may bring a smile to someone's face on a bad day. So I'm honored. I really am, and it means a lot to me to hear that. It really does. I mean, I recognize you. I do. I know you've written into these programs for a while now, maybe since 2014 or 2015. I know you've been around a bit. You're a long-time listener, and it's wonderful to read that, really. I mean, I wish you the very best of luck on all the endeavors that you face now and in the future. I wish you the absolute very best. And, wow, thank you. I mean that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Lovely message there from a long-time listener. And finally, 2 short messages. Requesting a review of Comet Ping Pong Pizza in Washington, D.C. Well, I've gotten a lot of messages requesting that establishment, and I know the association with that place. I do. The whole Pizzagate Whether that was real or not, it's in the news, and, you know, all of that. I'm sorry I'm not in DC, so I can't review it anyways. I'm not in Washington, D.C. So there goes that idea. And finally, the last message for this program. Hi, Review Bra. Just rewatched your review from 2015 on the chocolate-covered Lay's chips because it came up on my recommended feed. I wanted to say I remember trying those chips around the same time you did, and I also feel they were too chocolatey and needed more salt. I know this is completely irrelevant now, but I thought I'd let you know. From Lucas. And Lucas, that was Lucas who wrote in. Thank you for writing, once again. And thank you for your observation, yes. Yes, those chips, I do remember them. I was wearing a blue suit back then. It was a potato chip review, one of my first that I ever did for potato chips. So thank you for your message, and thank you for writing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week. Once more, should you wish to write in, you may do so via one of three ways: youtube.com/user/reportoftheweek. Click on the About tab, send message, type the contents of your message therein, and send it off. Or you may utilize email, repweekinterview1@gmail.com. That's REPWEEKINTERVIEW1, the number 1@gmail.com. As well as VORWinfo@gmail.com. That's VORWINFO@gmail.com. Do remember the new quota on letters, roughly between 12 and 20 letters per show. It's simply done, though, to consolidate these shows, to allow them to be produced faster, and also to still give the mailbag program a chance. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, a word of note. It's not any sort of word of wisdom or anything, it's just a word to take note of. Keep in mind, in regards to writing, that if this show is to be produced weekly or fortweekly, that's every 2 weeks or so, keep in mind that since the show is to be produced quicker, there will be less letters overall in terms of volume to read, meaning less to essentially choose from. What I'm trying to say, folks, is that since this show will hopefully be produced quicker, you'll have a greater chance of your letter being read. So if you feel completely discouraged from writing in now, don't. Just remember what I mentioned in terms of the quota. But all in all, if you want to write, then please do. And if you want to write and you want more of a written response back, I recommend utilizing the YouTube inbox for that, but simply message me and mention that this is not for broadcast. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes this broadcast of VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week. I hope you enjoyed it. I know there were several changes that had to be made here, but it's only for the best. It's only so that we can get you shows more frequently, and I do hope you understand that. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, happy December. Thank you for listening. Take care, and should all go well, we will see you again next week. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. Goodbye, and feedback is always appreciated. You're listening to VORW, the voice of the Report of the Week.